All aboard! Welcome to an All Aboard podcast. I am your host, Brandon DeFreitas, coming at you from DeFreitas Enterprises Studios. Welcome to another fantasy football season. Today's target audience, I want to first thank the Dynasty League. We launched the new Dynasty League this year, and I know the 10 members are probably going to be our main target audience for this podcast. Each week we'll go through, we'll talk about the teams, some of the moves and transactions. And the exciting thing about starting the Dynasty League is this will be year round too. So maybe we can do once a month, once every 2 weeks or something in the off season. Either way, we'll figure it out. But look, I'm excited and I'm thrilled. And I want to kick off this podcast first by thanking all of you in the league for joining. It's been something that I have been thinking about for a few years, just expanding my interest and love of fantasy football into the dynasty realm. And, the startup draft, we had that. It definitely, was super competitive. And now we're here jumping into the season. And before we got too far in, I wanted to hop in and kick off our first podcast talking about power rankings, post draft power rankings. And before we fully get into the power rankings, I want to be honest with each and every one of you. This is for this year only. And I might include some tidbits because, looking through the teams at the bottom of the list that I have here, I don't think they're bad dynasty squads. I think they just maybe committed more to the future than the current year competition. So I will point that out. But don't get too mad at me for not loving your squad. Doesn't mean I don't like what you did in the draft. Just means I don't think you're one of the top competitors this season. And a little bit of a spoiler, I do think there's a heavy favorite this year. We will get to that team, but really there's one team in the league right now I think is primed to compete this season. And for those at the bottom list playing more for the future, I'll point out that next year might not be so hot for this one team. But let's jump right into it. 10 team league, big benches. I mean, it's a 25, you have 25 roster spots, 3 taxi squads. And, after all that and the draft, we get to the first team on the list that comes in and immediately has a Gus Edwards injury. So ranking number 10 in my power rankings, I unfortunately have Jimmy McAllister. And, Jimmy, I got to be honest, I had no idea your last name was McAllister until just now. So we're all getting to know each other. J.M. McAllister or J. McAllister, whatever. It doesn't matter. He's the 10th place team right now. And the reason he is not so much his starting lineup. I mean, he's running out Christian McCaffrey. He had the first pick, but you look at his lineup, and if everyone stays healthy, he can be competitive. He has an advantage at tight end with Darren Waller. He is rocking Christian McCaffrey, but then you go to the bench, and mind you, this is with Devin Singletary already starting at the running back too. And I mean, his other running backs, Malcolm Brown, Darrell Williams, Jamar Jefferson, more of a future type player. Ronald Jones was awful last night, fumbled, went in the doghouse. So Jimmy's already got problems at running back beyond Christian McCaffrey. And he's got nothing to speak of on the bench at running back. And then, he's got some interesting pieces at wide receiver. But to be honest, like any of those bench guys, I guess Denzel Mims is talented. I just don't like the way his career's going. And we all know how the footballers feel about Kadarius Toney. So, I think his best late round young pick would be Josh Palmer, the rookie receiver for the Chargers. I think he's worthwhile having on your watch list and redraft, and maybe that's going to come out and benefit Jimmy as the season goes along. But things can change a lot. I just look at the squad and I just see a lot of potential holes. And if I were Jimmy, I'd be potentially looking to shop Christian McCaffrey to a team in contention to reload this entire roster. I know it's pretty rough first review to A, take, admit I didn't know your last name, and then B, absolutely take a dump on your roster. But unfortunately, that's where we're at. And we'll move to the 9th place team in the standings, or in my power rankings. You might notice too, I'm going to go a little bit quick. I want to limit these podcasts to a little, 40 minutes maximum. give you guys a chance to listen to them. I know in the past, in our previous podcasts for other leagues, would go well over an hour, and it was tough to follow. So, going to be short and sweet this season, so we can do more and be more consistent with it. The ninth place team I have is, I mean, this guy's an absolute wagon in my redraft. He's been to 3 straight championships in my redraft. Jon B comes in at the ninth place team, and I sort of think what led to it is he's a huge Kyle Pitts fan, and he drafted Kyle Pitts. It was maybe might have been the second round. I think he went Kyle Pitts, and hey, it's great to call your shot on a guy, but to me, this is still a player who, while being wildly talented, is still unproven at the NFL level. He could end up being pretty good, but I mean, we've seen a lot of tight ends come into this league, who, maybe they're not quite as much of a unicorn as Kyle Pitts, but highly touted guys that they don't necessarily become Travis Kelce. So if Pitts is going to be Travis Kelce for the next 10 years, I think the draft pick's worth it that early. If not, and he's getting, top 5 production for a decade, I think maybe that's a pick at his second overall pick in a dynasty league. Might be something he looks to regret, but it's not that Jon can't compete this year. It's more that I look at his starting lineup and it's not quite up there with some of the other teams. He's got Kyler, the running back core of Carson and Mike Davis is more of a current year type thing. I love CeeDee Lamb and DJ Moore as a combination this year and for the future, but I'm not so sure, what to think of like a Kenny Golladay. And then, Mecole Hardman's the number 2 receiver for Kansas City, but he's a flex for him. And, I think T. Higgins is a solid flex, and he's pretty good at quarterback. But overall, I sort of see this as an average roster. And if he has an injury to Lamb, DJ Moore, then I mean one of those two guys or one of his running backs, he's really going to be fighting it with his lineup. This all said, though, I do really like some pieces on his bench. I'm a big AJ Dillon fan. I don't know when it's going to happen for him, but I think he's an absolute bowling ball and a good piece to have on your bench. He's sitting with Justin Fields, who should come in and be a strong option for him in the super flex. And some players like Diami Brown, I think, is going to be good in the future. Dwayne Eskridge, the receiver for the Seahawks, was their first draft pick this year, and really the first guy up if either Tyler Lockett or DK Metcalf gets hurt. Maybe I have him ranked a little bit too low, but at the end of the day, I just thought he wasn't one of the stronger competitors for a playoff team. But I think it is sort of a testament to the league too, that a team that looks like this is currently ranked 9 in my rankings. So coming in at the 8th spot, it's the home league again. The home league had a little bit rough. I don't think any of us are going to end up in the top half of the power rankings. Alex comes in ranked as the 8th place team. Alvin and the Claypools. I am a big Chase Claypool fan, and going into the draft, he was the one guy I was like, oh man, I really want to get Chase Claypool in a dynasty, but unfortunately my brother really wanted to get him too. What I like that what Alex did was that he's got a running back core of Kamara, Jonathan Taylor, Miles Sanders. And to me, like, I think Jonathan Taylor could really be the next big thing in fantasy. He's young. He has a great offensive line to run behind. I mean, he played with Phillip Rivers last year, so it's like not like I'm worried about the quarterback situation on that offense. Taylor and Kamara could be a really great engine for his team. Where I think he lacks is his receivers. Jerry Jeudy, I love, and Claypool, I love, but they're both young, unproven, and even like a Marquise Brown, he's a good flex in our 4-flex format. But it's just we're getting to a point where it's like, is Marquise Brown going to be something or is he not going to be anything? So things could really break right for his receivers this year, but he doesn't have any top options at the wide receiver position. And where I really think he hurts himself compared to some of the other teams in the league is talk about the bad quarterback train. Sam Darnold, Daniel Jones, Tua Tagovailoa. These are 3 players that, like, next year, I don't think it's far-fetched to say neither of them could be starting for these teams. That And, that's tough from a dynasty perspective. I think Alex is going to be prioritizing rookie quarterback. Luckily, I don't think too many other teams in the league will be, so he should be able to get that done. But of all those guys, I think Sam Darnold has some upside this year with his strong receiving core there in Carolina. And, maybe I'm wrong on Tua because Tua has a good supporting cast too. I just think, my own guy, I have Deshaun Watson right now. So I have a feeling Watson's going to be in Miami at some point before the start of next season. Trey Lance can make a big difference for Alex because if Trey Lance, he's his last quarterback, that should help. He should have one guy going forward to the future. But we haven't seen him play. So, this is all projection at this point, why I think it's a little dangerous for Alex's team. I did forget to mention Jamar Chase, which I think was a really savvy pick. And he lasted for a while because not a lot of glowing reports on his rookie training camp. But this is a player who took last year off in college football. And I think that can really affect you going into your rookie season. And he's immensely talented. I think people maybe with Chase forgot, not that you forget it, but like we're sort of in the lens of a redraft, and in the middle of there, I wasn't thinking to Chase, but I think he's a really, really strong dynasty pick for Alex. So this is the one team at the beginning when I said, I don't think Alex can compete this year with some of the heavy hitters, but I think he's got a lot of youth on this team. And I think he is the strongest in the league in terms of building for the future. If you look at his team across the board, he's got a lot of good young talent. And if I'm him, I see how the season goes. Maybe a guy like Miles Sanders, if you're out of contention, is a guy you sell off, get some future assets, and start building this team towards the future. Wow, we already got through 3 teams already, and we're getting into this guy. I talked to Will Tam earlier, and he thought he would be last place, but he's coming in at number 7. I think we're now in the realm where I could see Jon B, Alex, Jimmy, making a run at the playoffs. You never know, but I think they're, less percentage wise likely. And now I get into a team Tam where I think Tam's going to make a strong fight for the playoffs this season. I have him coming just short, but he's got some good pieces. He really went with the super flex early in the draft, going Russell Wilson at the 10th pick and following it up with Trevor Lawrence for the future. So he's set there at a position where, much like our fantasy baseball league, it was just like there was some fear that quarterbacks are going to fly off the board. And I think he maybe overplayed his hand there and thought it was going to be stronger than it was. But that said, he also came back. He has Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He's got Antonio Gibson. Allen Robinson is a strong one, at least for the next 2 years. We'll see where he ends up. TJ Hawkinson, I think, is ready to make the next leap at the tight end position. And then guys like, Brandon Cooks, who's at least a solid player this year. And then Cortland Sutton has the potential to, continue his breakout from prior years. So I look at the team, maybe not as many, young players I love on the bench, but he's got some pieces. He can be in it this year. And I think with, I'm looking now at his IR spot. He's got Rashad Bateman. He's got J.K. Dobbins for next year. They said it's a clean ACL tear. So, yeah, I think Will Tam is pretty well positioned. He's similar to my team, where I feel like he can be one of those wild card teams in the playoffs. He's not one of the top teams this year, but he straddled it nicely, where I don't think he's not really too far on either end in terms of future and now. So I think he's positioned pretty strongly in the league. And with that, it's probably a good time to jump into my team, which I have as the 6th spot, conveniently rating myself as the final playoff team. But I went into this draft hoping to compete in year 1, and it just didn't work out that way for me. And I don't think I have one of the top tier teams. I really want to drop names, but they're, I look at those top tier teams and I don't think I'm quite there with the starting lineup. That said, though, the quarterback position, this is where I think I'm strongest. Dak Prescott just was an absolute stud last night. Hearing great things about Zach Wilson. He could be the next big thing, but he's my super flex this year. And I have Jared Goff to mix in with him. And, Jared Goff, I get it. Jared Goff kind of stinks, but there's no one else there in Detroit. So I felt confident that for this season, Goff's going to be there to mix in. And then I took the chance in round 8 on Deshaun Watson. And this is as good a time as ever. And I think this is probably where I'll focus with my team, and I'll go on to the next squad because I want you guys to listen more about your teams than hear about mine. But Watson was a pick where for me, I'm getting him in the 8th round. If he returns next year, and it's just like with the legal issues and everything going on, it just seems to me like I would take a bet at him being back next year if I had to. And if he's back next year, he's a first round pick in the super flex format. So for me, you wait a year, you get him in the 8th round. And I think that's where my draft went off the rails in terms of playing a little bit more for the future than I intended. And I'm in that Will Tam tier where it's like, I feel well positioned for the future and I feel well positioned for this year. I just don't think I quite have the horses that some of these other teams have at the top. Already through 6 teams flying. Take a breath here. I know, guys, I'm trying to fly through. I'm trying to make these quicker for you. Quick administrative item. If anyone wants to come join, I would love to have, a co-host from the league or outside. So, definitely reach out to me, let me know. And we can do some of these together throughout the season. But wanted to get this in. The first games were last night with the Cowboys and the Buccaneers. So wanted to make sure we got one in quick by myself, and then we'll go from there going forward. So that's where we're at right now. And let me just pull up. It's funny. I've already forgotten. I know where it ends. I know the number 1 team. And then I'm slowly not remembering the exact order we had. So if you bear with me for 2 seconds here. There we go. The 5th team, and this is actually my opponent. Interesting. I have the 5th and the 6th seed playing each other week 1. I have Mark ranked as the 5th team. He's got a pretty strong roster for year 1. I mean, he has Tom Brady. So, that clearly was a current year play for him. But, he's got Brady, Derrick Henry, another current year play, Antonio Brown, Mike Evans, who, I think Mike Evans is starting to get up there in age. I still think he has 3 years of relevance left, which is probably, that's really how the footballers say you should look at a dynasty in 3-year segments. But I think he's a little bit more on the older end. And you look at the rest of his roster, Mike Williams is a free agent at the end of this year. I'm not really a fan. I wouldn't be surprised if Josh Palmer is going to take over that role as soon as this season. And he's got DeAndre Hopkins too. So he's got some really good high-end talent on this team. And I look at the bench. There's no youth I'm super interested in. I mean, Rob Gronkowski is year to year at this point, but he'll help him this season. My concern with Mark is, as I look through this roster, where's the future going to come from? And then I'm also concerned that for a team where the future looks a little bit foggy to me, he's not a top tier team this season. I think he's a little too Buccaneers heavy. He has Brady, Brown, Mike Evans, and Rob Gronkowski. And to me, that limits your upside. And the example would be last night. He's got Antonio Brown sitting there with 21 fantasy points, and then Mike Evans with 3.9. Brown got 7 targets. Evans got 6. I know Godwin was over 10 targets, and I just see that they're all really good. And he probably got a value on Antonio Brown in the draft, being a dynasty, and people weren't really buying him. They're probably all similar, not stylistically, but in terms of overall talent. Like, they're all very talented receivers there in Tampa. I just don't see how they're going to differentiate the targets, and it's going to make them inconsistent. And if Mark plays Brown, Evans, and Gronk, I think it's going to be exactly what you saw here. Brown goes off, but then Evans, didn't. The one counter you can say is I feel like when you stack like players on the same team like this, not like a quarterback receiver, but 2 receivers or a receiver running back, I feel like it generally increases your consistency, but decreases your overall upside, because the chances of Brown and Evans both going off is like minuscule. Overall speaking, I'm sure it can happen with this team, but I'm just saying, for them to both go off, it's got to be a monster game. And But that said, one of them has a good chance any week to go off. And when they do, the other one maybe doesn't, but it evens out. So maybe Mark's looking at it as I have 25 points from Brown and Evans, and that's pretty good combined. And that's how you got to look at it. But I do think it limits your upside because I don't see many weeks where Antonio Brown's going to be over 20 and then Mike Evans also being over 20. Moving up to the fourth ranked team. And we're getting into some of these teams that really prioritized current year. Will Travers is the fourth team. And he's had a little rough go of it, but in some of our fantasy leagues in the past. But I'll tell you what, he's the one guy in this league who has dynasty experience. In fact, his league did contracts and everything. So he's fired up. He's got his former league mates helping him behind the scenes. And I mean, it's a strong team. And I'm going to read off the starting lineup, and you're going to see why, maybe you're Jon B and you're listening to this podcast and you're like, Brandon's so full of crap, which yes, you're absolutely right. I am full of crap in general, but this is the lineup for Travers and why like this top tier is just different. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, then he's got Mixon and James Robinson, DK Metcalf, Stephon Diggs, Noah Fant at the tight end, Julio Jones, Amari Cooper, Laviska Shenault, Jarvis Landry, Ryan Tannehill. Like those are all really strong options. And I mean, those are guys who, you're starting in your redraft, and this is a really deep dynasty league. So that to me just sets him apart. He's got Nyheim Hines on the bench. I think you can mix in Cole Beasley could be a good flex. Curtis Samuel's on the IR now, but he could be a good flex. Emmanuel Sanders, another good flex. So I really like what he did here. And I'm scrolling through the team too. It's not like he fully played for the future either. Like he's got Jalen Waddle, who you really like going forward, high draft capital player. And then, Laviska Shenault, I already mentioned, is one of those second year wide receivers who really looks like he fits that Percy Harvin role in Urban Meyer's Jacksonville offense. So really like what Travers did. I think he is a championship contender for this season. I have him at the fourth spot in my power rankings, and he could potentially be higher. Now, there are two teams and this is one of them where I feel like they totally sold off for year one. Edwin, the number 3 ranked team, comically waited on quarterback, and as a result, he's playing with Matt Ryan, Kirk Cousins, Jimmy G, and Carson Wentz. Why am I worried? Well, Jimmy G could lose his job and probably is going to lose his job early in this season. Carson Wentz, this is kind of his last hurrah. If he doesn't do it with Frank Reich, his former offensive coordinator in Indianapolis, then I think he's done. And then how many years does Matt Ryan have left? Kirk Cousins' contract is up after this year, and they just drafted Kellen Mond. So Edwin, I said not many other teams. Edwin and Alex are going to be battling off the top quarterbacks in this year's fantasy, in this year's rookie draft. But that said, I mean, listen to his lineup again. Like, I hate to keep saying it, even to my team in the sixth, like this lineup of Matt Ryan, Zeke, Dalvin Cook, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Tyler Higbee, Juju, David Montgomery, like Damian Harris. Holy crap, what a lineup. Devonta Smith, a nice young player. So, like, these are good players. And if you're Edwin, maybe the strategy is, you're in it this season. And if things don't go as planned, you can sell off some of these assets to teams that are in contention. So, I'll reveal it was almost a half joking offer just to kind of like rattle him a little bit after Zeke's performance. But I offered him Carlos Hyde and a 2021 first for Zeke this morning. And he's like, I'm not selling yet. And I can see why he's not selling yet. Edwin's a strong championship contender this season. The top two, and if it's not one of your teams, you maybe lost a little bit of track here, but I'm sure, for the two owners who are in this discussion, they know, and they're wondering who the number 1 team is. A little bit of a break for some water, and I'll announce the number 2 team. It's Fatty Cats. Ben Dietz sitting here at number 2. He's a championship contender. I know he's going to be a little disappointed he wasn't the top team, Here's what I like about Ben, and here's why I think that he had the best overall draft in the league this season. He has a extremely strong lineup, and I think I have him ranked as number 2 for this season. But there's a lot of young guys on this team. A lot of guys I think are going to be relevant for a while. Josh Allen being one. He's got Aaron Jones, who just signed a new contract. Darrell Henderson's kind of a this year play, but strong this season. Chris Godwin, Calvin Ridley, Justin Jefferson, Robert Woods, Michael Pittman, a strong player for the future. And then he's got, the current year Melvin Gordon, the flex. That's fine. Robert Tunyon, his quarterbacks, Allen and Stafford is a nice one too. Then he's got Mayfield on the bench. Jerick McKinnon could be a receiving option for him. Same with JD McKissick. He's got Trey Sermon, the rookie, sitting in the wings to take over for Henderson at some point. And the sneaky pick that I was really annoyed with, I am a big Michael Gallup fan. Alex knows it. Everyone in my redraft knows it. I've repeatedly said he might be the best of the Dallas 3 receivers, but he's just not used appropriately there in Dallas and isn't used as along one of the top 2 guys. So yeah, I'm looking at he's such a great draft pick in a dynasty because Gallup's contract's over after this year. And I think he's going to go to a team, be a top 2 receiver, probably going to go to a team like Corey Davis did and be the number 1. And I would love to see what he could do with a target volume. So I truly like that selection. I have Ben as the number 1 team. Alex is going to make fun of me, call it a homer pick. I don't know why that's a homer pick, but I'm sure Alex is going to rip on me for it. But I think Ben, drafted a strong year 1 team with a lot of youth that's going to keep him relevant for a long time. So great job, Ben. I think you had the best draft. And now I call it the YOLO team. And John, I'm not saying you don't have the pieces to stay relevant in the future, but holy crap, did you go all in on this season? Lamar Jackson, Eckler, Najee Harris, Cooper Kupp, Tyler Lockett, Travis Kelce, Robbie Anderson, Keenan Allen, Myles Gaskin, Corey Davis. And Aaron Rodgers. That is the best lineup by a mile for this season. And it's going to be very interesting to see if, hey, does the preseason favorite end up winning the championship? Because I'll tell you what, John's lineup is miles better than mine. And I don't know how I'm going to get there, but it's not like all these guys are necessarily old, but I think what's a little concerning for him in the future is, even look at quarterback. Aaron Rodgers retiring at any moment wouldn't surprise me. Derek Carr is always halfway on the way out. Bridgewater is probably a 1-year guy, might even lose his job to Drew Lock in season. And then Lamar Jackson, I think we all I'm a big Lamar Jackson fan. I was going to go Dak or Jackson. I picked Dak over Jackson just because I think the running quarterbacks have a little less longevity, because if they slow down later or they get a little banged up later, pocket passers can still get by with their arm strength. Whereas, Lamar Jackson, I think when his legs go, I just don't think he'll be able to be a top tier NFL quarterback anymore. That's my own personal opinion, but I also love him. I absolutely think he can win a Super Bowl. I think he's a strong candidate for MVP this season. I just wonder longevity for the Dynasty League. That said, though, a lot of these guys are in their prime, a Cooper Kupp, a Tyler Lockett, Keenan Allen. I think the only thing is once these receivers get around 30, where they're starting to get up there, then you do see a little bit of a downturn. But John, man, it's going to look good for at least this season, probably still be pretty damn good next season. And then Najee Harris is a nice little player to own and have as an engine going into the future. But John, you went all out for the season. I'm excited to see it. My only concern is he drafted a lot for the starting lineup and not as much for the bench. So if injuries hurt, that could be the way we don't see a John championship. But to me, this team is scary. And I personally hope he's later in the season on my matchups. Let a couple guys get banged up, let Travis Kelce miss a game. I don't want not trying to jinx you, John, but by the time I play you, it'd be nice if this wasn't the full strong lineup. So that's going to conclude the power rankings. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for joining on this first podcast. And like I said, we'll get some guests coming in the future, and we can figure out what we want to do in terms of frequency and everything. But really do appreciate you guys joining. I'm pumped for it. It's gonna be a lot of moves. And yeah, let's see. Can Jon win the championship? I've got my money on it. Thanks for joining, everybody, from the Old Board Podcast. I'm Brandon DeFreitas. We'll see you next time.